For those that don't know me, my name is Tom Homan. I got a message. To the millions of illegal aliens, you better start packing now.
Well, that is Tom Homan. He's going to be America's Border Tsar as soon as Donald Trump takes office in January. It'll be his job to implement the president's plan to deport millions of illegal immigrants. He'll be taking on people traffickers and drug smugglers, but is he up to the job? We'll be hearing from a former Navy SEAL who's a big fan of Homan.
I can think of no one better for Border Tsar because he's been heavily involved. He's held children in his arms as they died.
But first, let's meet the new sheriff in town, the man that liberals love to hate.
Mi gente, he pensado invadir una casa en United States.
Record high number of illegal crossings.
The suspect from El Salvador illegally crossed into the U.S. in February 2023 after killing a woman in his country.
America has lost control of its borders. U.S. officials now warning that the situation is nearing a, quote, breaking point.
Donald Trump is building out his cabinet.
Tom Homan, his former director of immigration enforcement, will serve as the White House Border Tsar.
Mr. Homan.
You work for me. I'm a taxpayer. I'm a taxpayer. You work for me.
Do you not care? Is it because these children don't look like children that are around you?
I held a 5-year-old boy in my arms in back of that tractor trailer. I knelt down beside him and said a prayer for him, because I knew what his last 30 minutes of his life was like.
Expect deportation to be top of mind for this incoming Border Tsar.
He has been on the campaign trail talking about Trump's key signature campaign promise of mass deportations.
This is a guy with a cowboy attitude.
I've worked for 6 presidents, starting with Ronald Reagan. Every president I've worked for said they're going to secure the border.
Homan has served under Republican and Democratic administration. During the Obama administration, the agency actually carried out record numbers of deportations.
As a guy who spent 34 years deporting illegal aliens, I got a message. To the millions of illegal aliens that Joe Biden's releasing our country in violation of federal law, you better start packing now. I wake up every day pissed off if we gave this administration the most secure border in my lifetime. Entering this country illegally is a crime. It's illegal to get a job if you're in the country illegally. It's illegal to hire an illegal alien.
I love you, Joe Biden. Thank you for everything, Joe Biden.
Trump calling him a stalwart on border control.
Every morning I get up. Every morning I'm pissed off about what this administration did to the most secure border in my lifetime. If I offend anybody tonight, I don't give a how many women weren't being raped. How many children weren't drowning in the river? How many pounds of fentanyl didn't make it in this country to kill Americans? How many known suspected terrorists didn't make it in the country? How many billions of dollars did the cartels make? President Trump is one president. He secured the border at a level we've never seen before.
Homan is a big backer of Trump's so-called zero-tolerance policy.
The architect of Trump's policy to tear little kids away from their moms and dads at the border.
Remember, these same individuals are the ones that handed over their children to smuggling organizations.
You recommended family separation.
I recommended zero tolerance.
Which includes family separation.
The same as is with every U.S. citizen parent gets arrested when they're with a child.
A promise Mr. Trump made on his campaign trail was to launch the largest deportation operation in U.S. history.
It would cost $88 billion to deport 1 million people a year. Is that what American taxpayers should expect?
What price do you put on national security? Is it worth it?
Is there a way to carry out mass deportation without separating families?
Of course there is. Families can be deported together.
Okay, let's bring in our guests now. 2 of our panel think that Homan will be a great Border Tsar. They are Jessica Vaughan, who is an immigration expert working in Washington, and Sheriff Thaddeus Cleveland, who is in Texas and used to work with Border Patrol. Taking the opposite view, we have Federico de Jesús, a former spokesperson for Barack Obama. Welcome to the program. Everyone, Federico, as you're on your own there, I'll let you go first. What are you worried about?
I'm worried about Mr. Homan's statements to 60 Minutes that he'd be willing to deport entire families, which means that the undocumented, which have U.S. citizen and permanent resident, parents or family members would also be subject to the mass deportations that, according to estimates, could cost $88 billion a year if you deport 1 million undocumented immigrants per year. If you include families, that would probably be more expensive. It would cost the American economy, and more importantly, the family values that conservatives say they favor would tear them apart. And this is a nation of immigrants, and it should stay that way. Yes, we need legal pathways for immigration, but not that way.
You're making many points. Just take the first point. He was asked if it's possible to deport illegal immigrants without breaking up families, and he said, yes, it is possible. You deport the entire family. He didn't say he would deport the entire family, to be fair.
Well, sure. That's a very nuanced without a distinction. The reality is that it's very difficult to do. It would be subject to racial profiling, given people's last names. And again, it's 12 million people who are integral to American families, to the economy, and to American society. And to do that would be cruel and detrimental to the American
Federico,
society.
you used to work for Barack Obama. He was once known as deporter-in-chief. It's not like it's unprecedented, is it?
Well, there's a difference between deporting people who had just come in undocumented fashion, and it's very different to do mass deportations of 12 million people. Yes, Obama was the deporter-in-chief. He also did DACA to legalize people who were brought here through no fault of their own, and DAPA. So he has a mixed record, and I did not favor his mass deportations, but he did not divide families at the border like Donald Trump did.
He didn't? Thaddeus Cleveland, come in.
Yeah, man, I'd like to clarify a few points. So in Mr. Homan, Tom's 60 Minutes interview, of course, he did say that he would deport families. But look, any immigration judge isn't going to put a deportation order on a illegal parent that has a kid that's here that's a United States citizen. That's not going to happen. So those won't be looked to be deported. But also in the interview, I know that Federico mentioned, a dollar amount on deportations. And look, like Tom said, there should be no price on public safety and border security here in the United States of America. As you mentioned, I spent 26 years in the United States Border Patrol. I was raised here on the U.S.-Mexico border, actually in the community where I ended my Border Patrol career and became sheriff. What we've seen under the last 4 years has been a complete dismantling of the U.S.-Mexico border. And I can say that because not only having grown up here, but I spent a Border Patrol career. I was hired under President Clinton, worked through President Bush. I worked through President Obama, President Trump, and a year and some change of President Biden. I know what the border looked like before. I know what it's looked like since. And to expound that point, we've had more deaths of people trying to cross this border over the last 4 years than we've had before. And I must say, look, when we talk about, starting to look at people's skin color, it's no longer the U.S.-Mexico border. It's the U.S. world border. People from all over the world are crossing our border illegally, exploiting this border, and they have all colors of skin, to include white skin. So, it's definitely not racial profiling down here for just people from Mexico or Hispanic descent.
Federico, do you accept what Thaddeus is saying? It's not just the U.S.-Mexico border anymore, it's the U.S. world border.
Well, it's been the case for a long time, since before the Obama administration and the Bush era, that half of the undocumented population overstayed their visas and did not cross the border, number one. And number two, government doesn't have unlimited resources, so there has to be a price tag. And number three, the reality is that Joe Biden, despite some immigration advocates' wishes, basically stopped the asylum process, and border crossings have gone down. And so crime is also less with the immigrant population than the citizen population. So that's been exaggerated. And we do need legal pathways for people to come legally to work to fill the jobs that obviously companies are fulfilling. I actually encourage that employers have crackdowns, because you can't just punish the people who are working without the people that are hiring them. But that has to be part of comprehensive immigration reform to fix the system, not fearmonger with this issue.
Federico, thank you for that. Jessica, you're an expert in immigration studies. Federico raises a couple of points. First of all, that the cost of deportations would be prohibitive and a net loss for the United States.
Mm-hmm. Well, first, I'd like to say that no one should be exempt from immigration enforcement just because they've had a child here after they crossed illegally. So, grown people who made the choice to come here illegally and then try to stay by having a child are not going to be exempt from enforcement. Having said that, the focus of Trump's deportation initiative is not going to be families. The focus is going to be the more than 1 million people who have come illegally, whether by overstaying or crossing the border illegally, who've come to ICE's attention because they've committed a crime, been arrested, prosecuted, and are now deportable criminal aliens. Those are people are going to be the highest priority. It's more than 1 million people living here, and they already have final orders of removal. An immigration judge said, you have no basis to stay here, you need to leave, and they haven't. So that's, I really think it's important to not try to spread fear among immigrants by pretending that Trump's plan is to go after grandmothers and children. That's not it at all. And the focus for ICE has always been on criminals. And as for the cost of removals, there's no question that immigration enforcement costs money, but the amount saved to Americans outweighs that cost considerably. And numerous academic studies have shown this. And that is because of the cost to taxpayers of allowing illegal immigrants to be here and collecting welfare benefits and receiving health care and numerous other public benefits that they are allowed to access.
And Jessica,
so, what is the price of national security and protecting Americans from transnational gangs, cartel violence?
Yes, Jessica. One of the points, one of the additional points that Federico made was that illegal immigrants in the United States, with the exception of the fact that they crossed over illegally, actually commit per capita less crime than native-born U.S. citizens. Is that true?
We have no idea because nobody counts the immigration status or the number of illegal aliens who are arrested. I've examined all the academic research in great detail, and really it appears that illegal immigrants are no more nor no less likely to commit crimes here than anyone else. But so what? The point is that some people who are here illegally, in defiance of our laws, do commit crimes, and those are the ones that should be the highest priority for removal. I don't think anybody in the right mind would dispute that people who are here illegally and commit crimes should be removed.
Let's just squeeze in some hard numbers now about illegal border crossings. They went up to something like 2 million a year under Biden, when, if you look back over the Trump period, they were more like a few 100,000. It's estimated that at least 11 million illegal or undocumented migrants are living in America. Some say more like 20 or 30 million. Biden used his parole authority to fly over 300,000 immigrants directly into America in 2023 from countries like Venezuela, Cuba, Haiti, and Nicaragua. And it's estimated that 13,000 convicted killers, non-citizens, are in the United States right now. So, Federico, those were some of the headlines that we've seen. Do you accept those headlines, or do you think some of those are myths?
Well, again, after the Republicans refused to pass an enforcement-only bill because Donald Trump didn't want it as an election issue, or I'm sorry, he wanted the election issue. He told Republicans in Congress to vote against a bill they had negotiated with Democrats just to enforce the border, just to provide more resources, to do the same things that your other guests are saying. He stopped asylum at the border and crossings went down. And the statistics you mentioned about murder, there are about 325 million people. So 13,000 is 13,000 too many, but it's a lot less than native-born citizens. And again, the reality is that they have an economic purpose and we should control the border. I'm not against deporting criminals. Everybody should be in favor of that, as long as you don't break up families.
Thaddeus, let me put that point to you that Federico made, which is that a cross-party border bill was presented by the Biden administration, although it was in May 2024, Federico, a bit late, and therefore it was the Republicans and Trump who scotched that deal. Thaddeus.
Couldn't be further from the truth. And I'll tell you what, before President Trump even weighed in on the Senate bill, I was already talking that it was a bill that wouldn't fly along the border. And the reason I say that is it had a threshold. You can't put a threshold, 5,000, 7,000 people crossing our border illegally before we shut it down. Look, when I worked in Arizona and we were catching 1,000 people in Nogales a day, 30,000 a month, we were leading the nation in marijuana seizures. Our assistant U.S. attorneys put thresholds on marijuana smugglers and alien smugglers. And what did the cartels do? They brought in those numbers just below that so they could avoid prosecution. So that Senate bill had nothing to do with actual border security. It had to do with codifying what's happened the last 4 years. The Republicans did pass a bill in the House. It was sent to the Senate, and Chuck Schumer sat on it. It was H.R. 2, and it dealt with exactly what we've dealt with this past 4 years, securing our nation's borders, keeping asylum seekers out of the United States until they can actually have their case heard. Because what's happened, we're going to have a backlog, or we already do, over 10 years of people that have come to this country. They've been given a date to show up for their asylum case, and it's more than 10 years out. We're going to be inundated with these cases for many years. People may not show up, but I must make one more point to Jessica's point about criminal aliens. Look, when somebody enters our country and they commit a crime, the local law enforcement, they're not immigration experts. They're not immigration agents. They can't decide if someone here is legal or illegal. So they just mark them up as a stat of someone that's committed a crime. If they go back to Mexico and cross back, or they go back to a foreign country and come back, and we identify them at the border, then we're able to identify them as criminals. So point being is that there's many, many more criminal aliens in this country than have been identified by immigration services.
Jessica, just a final question for you. On the matter of deportations, people are concerned that you might see mass roundups and a lot of violence being required in order to make that happen. Is Tom Homan capable of doing mass deportations on the scale that people like J.D. Vance, 1 million a year, he's talking about? Are they capable of making that operation happen without some terrible unintended consequence happening?
Well, I think so. I mean, and this concept of quote unquote mass deportations is going to consist of a number of different things. Yes, some more forcible removals of the highest priority cases, but also a lot of this is messaging, and people are going to get the idea that if they're not going to be allowed to stay here illegally, so they have a choice. They can either go home on their own, or they can wait around and potentially be subject to arrest. But also the focus is going to be on employers who are enticing illegal aliens to stay here by employing them against the law. And when the federal government goes after those employers, that is going to make a big difference, because we are going to see a lot more people decide to go home on their own when they can't get a job, can't get a driver's license, can't stay here with any public benefits. And so a lot of these repatriation and departures is not going to be done through forcible official arrests and removals and putting them on a federal government plane. It's going to happen naturally.
Jessica Vaughan, Thaddeus Cleveland, and Federico de Jesús, thank you all very much for your contributions. Much appreciated. Now, one of the new Border Tsar's top priorities will be to disrupt the flow of fentanyl into the country, a highly addictive drug which kills tens of thousands of Americans every year. Many of the ingredients used to make the drug are smuggled from China into Latin America and then across the border into the United States. As a result, cities like formerly beautiful San Francisco have been blighted. People bent over double, sick and addicted, living in hopeless squalor.
We've had a record amount of overdose deaths here in San Francisco, like 807 in 1 year.
Stopping this filthy trade is difficult, though, as undercover journalist Ben Westhoff found out. The American went to China posing as a drug dealer, and gangs there allowed him to look at their drug-making facilities. Well, we spoke to Ben a couple of hours ago and asked him what he thought of Tom Homan's appointment.
Tom Homan won't be more effective than anyone else at stopping fentanyl from getting across the border. And it's nothing against him. It's just that it's impossible to stop fentanyl from coming across. Basically, we can't stop drugs from getting into prisons, right? You hear about prisoners overdosing, dying all the time, and that's a maximum security environment. Now, fentanyl is 50 times more powerful than heroin, right? So the equivalent of 50 pounds of heroin is the equivalent of 1 pound of fentanyl. And we could never stop 50 pounds of heroin. So what makes us think we can stop 1 pound of fentanyl? Basically, it's just an impossible task.
So the new Border Tsar is going to be taking on the drug gangs. He's also mentioned tackling child smugglers. It's estimated that over 400,000 children were brought to the United States from October 2018 to September 2023, and 300,000 have gone missing. Some have ended up being forced to work like slaves. Others are being held by paedophiles. So let's bring in Craig Sawyer now. He's a former Navy SEAL and now dedicates himself to tracking down and apprehending paedophiles. Welcome to the program again, Craig. Nice to see you. Can you just tell our viewers who don't know much about you what your organization does?
Yes, we expose child trafficking that is being run in the United States. It is a covert operation run domestically here at industrial scale. And we expose it through documentary and every other means that we can, film, television, billboards, everything. We also interdict their operations. We arrest the predators and put them in prison. We have a 29 predator arrests so far with a 100% conviction rate and 87 warrants for more arrests.
People will be asking, why aren't the authorities doing more to make you unnecessary?
I would love that. I would love to go to the beach in my retirement and have a nice time knowing that our federal law enforcement and local law enforcement are taking care of this problem, but that's not the case.
Every time you catch some of these awful men, and I presume they are almost always men, does it feel like you're making a difference, or does it feel like a drop in the ocean?
It is both, to be honest with you. The stats, according to the National Center of Missing and Exploited Children, is that each of these predators harms an average of 70 children in their lifetime, if not caught. So we realize by stopping them and putting them in prison to rape no more, we've spared a list of children from their harm. But it also does appear like it feels like a drop in the bucket because we know the crime is so vast now and the penalties are so soft that it's exploding, and it has to be addressed in a big and meaningful way now.
And the people you're catching, are they both Americans and people from other countries?
It's literally everything, all walks of life, any nationality. Look, evil manifests itself in the heart of man and women, and you can't judge a book by its cover. It's on the inside. So we catch predators of every type.
And is it true to say that the amount of children being lost in the system, being abused, rises, it correlates directly with increasing illegal immigration?
Oh, without a doubt. It's simple math. And when you have a loss of control, the predators are going to exploit that weakness. And that's what we've seen with this lack of control on our border. The betrayal, the gross mismanagement of our border system here in the United States has been a global laughingstock for the last 4 years. And we've seen extensive harm done in all directions from it. And we celebrate the fact that it will be cleaned up now and run in a safe and responsible manner.
What I find astounding is that the Democrats are still claiming to be the good guys because they allow more undocumented people to cross the border. But actually, the impact is more fentanyl, more deaths, more rapes, more children exploited.
Yeah, you really have to look at the motive of those high up in the political realm. They're not compassionate people by our observation. They know what they're doing. They're capitalizing on other backdoor deals from the organized crime. So that's not about compassion, as they masterfully tell us through their media manipulations and psychological techniques. We realize that they are actually benefiting from the organized crime. And we have to, as a society, face that and realize they're not our friends. They're just hooking themselves up at our expense. And we have to install people. We have to elect people who are strong, of moral character and integrity, and will serve we the people in good faith in the face of threats and bribes, and decline those and serve on honorably anyway. That's what we need, a strength of character.
And do you think that Tom Homan is the right man to be a Border Tsar?
I do. I can think of no one better for Border Tsar because he's been heavily involved. He's held children in his arms as they died. He has been enraged and heartbroken from what's happened, and he's been right in the middle of it. And he loves and knows the agents that have been trying to work the border and protect us and whose hands have been tied. He knows the demoralization that they've suffered, and he means to get control. and run it legitimately so that it's safe for all and that it makes sense and that it's honorable. So I believe with all my heart that Tom Homan will serve very, very well. And he will be accountable. He will be able to present statistics and the data to the president who says, Tom, what's going on my border? Give me an update. Instead of what we see now is, oh, am I actually the border czar? No, I'm not. This kind of juvenile shirking of responsibility and accountability. I look forward to the return of leadership and accountability again in our national defense. And I think Tom is a fantastic choice.
And you know him personally, you've met him. What do you make of him?
I do. Yes, sir. He is off camera what you see on camera, which is refreshing. I've spoken at public events with him about border issues, along with a list of other true patriots. And he's sincere, and he's surrounded by those who are sincere. And he's very careful who he associates with, as is prudent. You have to be. And so we are in the same circles network of people who genuinely care and just want legitimacy and want our Constitution and our people served in good faith.
Craig Sawyer, thank you so much for sparing the time today. Really appreciate it. Thank you. And thank you at home and on your phones for watching. If you want to see this episode or any of our previous episodes again, do go to our channel on YouTube. Just type in Nexus, TRT World. Until next week then, goodbye.